Most people fail in calisthenics before they even start, and it's not because calisthenics is super hard. It's because they don't actually know where to start. In the next 10 minutes, I'm gonna show you exactly where to start, which exercises to do, even if you've never worked out before, if you don't have any equipment, and if you're completely feeling lost. My name is Joe Miro. I'm a certified personal trainer, I'm a calisthenics athlete, and I'm also a calisthenics coach. And I remember when I started calisthenics, I would just try to replicate all the movements that I would see on Instagram, on Facebook, or on YouTube. It took me years and years of trial and error in order to be able to get to where I am today. I've competed multiple times, I've always placed between first and third, and I've learned a ton of information along the way. When I was just starting out, I didn't really have a video like this that kind of had everything together in one place that would give me the basics of what I needed to start calisthenics. So that's why I want to create this video, so that when you are starting your calisthenics journey, you know exactly what the basics are, exactly where to start, and you won't make the same mistakes that I did. With that being said, I will be having weekly uploads on my YouTube channel, so if you're serious about calisthenics, make sure to subscribe. So let's start with the basics of calisthenics, right? So the basics of calisthenics, we have our push movements and we have our pull movements. Our push movements, the primary ones, are going to be our push-ups and our dips, and the pull movement, the primary one, is the pull-up. So if you do the math on that really quick, 2/3 of the movements are push movements, so that's why we're going to start with push. In general, a push movement involves your chest and your triceps, and it also involves a little bit of your shoulders. Understanding that movement pattern is super important, because this way you'll know which muscles you should be feeling when you're working out. Very often when I'm working with clients, they'll be doing a movement and they don't really know which muscle group is supposed to be working. So they'll be doing a push movement and asking me if they should be feeling their back. So just in general, understanding the basics of anatomy will help you a lot when you're working out. Quite often people talk about muscle-mind connection. I think this is what they mean when they talk about that. The way that I see muscle-mind connection is knowing which muscles should be working and feeling that while you're doing the movement. So let's start with the push-up. Push-ups are very easy to scale, and they're the #1 movement when it comes to calisthenics, just because you don't need any equipment. If you're strong enough to do the push-up off the floor, that's where you're gonna start. The regression to that would be knee push-ups. So you would have your knees on the ground, hands slightly forward, and you would be doing push-ups like that. If that feels a little bit too difficult for you, then we would go to the couch or any other inclined surface, and we would be doing push-ups off that inclined surface. And if that still feels too hard for you, then you can scale all the way up to a wall. The beautiful thing about push-ups is that no matter what level you're at, you can always do them. So even if you're at the very beginning and you need to start doing push-ups off a wall, that's completely fine. So let's go over the basics of form when it comes to push-ups. If we're taking our standard push-up off the floor, you want to have your hands shoulder width or slightly wider than shoulder width. I prefer to have my hands slightly turned in. I found that this is easier for me in order to keep that proper elbow position, which brings us to the point of the elbow position. So you can have your elbows really tight to your body. That's going to prioritize your triceps. You can have your elbows at 45 degrees. I believe that this is the ideal position. At 45 degrees, you'll be utilizing both your triceps and your chest, and it will be a safe position for your shoulders. And lastly, we have the position where your elbows are completely flared out. Yes, this may bias your chest a little bit, but also it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on your shoulders, so I do not recommend this position. So now we have our elbows at 45 degrees. You want to have your feet together and completely straight, and you want to make sure that you have some tension in your core. You don't want your hips sagging down to the ground, and you don't want to be piking and having your butt hanging in the air. Ideally, your body will be in a straight line. From this position, you're just gonna bend your elbows back at 45 degrees, try to get your chest as close as you can to the ground, and then you're gonna use your triceps and chest to push all the way up and come back to the original position. If we're scaling this to a couch, the idea is exactly the same. Feet are gonna be together, body's gonna be straight. All that's changing is that the hands are on a higher surface. And same thing goes for the wall. If that's too difficult and you need to do it on the wall, you just pick your hands up on a higher surface and you do it like that. Just to summarize the push-up, hands shoulder width or slightly wider than shoulder width, elbows coming back at 45 degrees, feet together, core tight, body straight. Once you have those, that's the perfect push-up. #1 mistake to avoid when doing push-ups, do not flare out your elbows. There's a very high chance that you will injure your shoulder doing that. So now we talked about the primary push movement, let's talk about the primary pull movement. The primary pull movement in calisthenics is pull-ups. Pull-ups will engage your back muscles and they will also engage your biceps. If you're interested in building a big back and getting that nice Dorito shape, then you need to be doing pull-ups. Not only will they help to improve your overall upper body strength, but they're very important for symmetry. So if you're doing a lot of push movements, you're gonna be able to grow your chest and triceps, and in order to balance that out, you also need to be doing the pulls. For most beginners, it's very hard to do pull-ups, so the very foundational, the very basic movement that you could do in order to help for pull-ups, that would be your dead hang. The dead hang is exactly what it sounds like. You'll be hanging from a bar in order to build that strength for your pull-ups. Now there's two versions of dead hangs that you can do, the active and the passive. The passive dead hang is when you're hanging from the bar, you're not activating any muscles, and you're really just focusing on your grip strength. The active dead hang is actually the first portion of the pull-up, and that involves you doing a scapular retraction. Scapular retraction is when you're taking your shoulders and pulling them down and locking them in place. And that would be the first step that you would do when doing the full pull-up. So in order to practice that, you get into a dead hang, and then you lock down your shoulders, and that would be the position that you would be practicing. From then on, you would begin to scale to negatives, assisted pull-ups with bands, and then you would eventually move on to the full pull-up. But as far as beginners are concerned, when just starting out with zero experience, you want to make sure that your hangs are on point. So form cues for your dead hang. You want to make sure that your hands are shoulder width or slightly wider than shoulder width apart. You want to make sure that your thumbs are wrapping under the pull-up bar. This way you're going to activate your forearms and really focus on that grip strength. In the short term, it will make your pull-up a little harder if you're gripping the bar with your thumb under, just because your forearms aren't used to the movement. But the more you do it and the more you practice, your forearms will become stronger and stronger, and eventually you'll be able to use that position as your rest during your pull-ups, and then you'll be able to get more reps out of it. Once again, I want to emphasize that this is super important, and this will help you with your pull-up in the future. What are the biggest mistakes and things to avoid when doing dead hangs? Primarily, the biggest mistake that people make is they only train passive dead hangs. Passive dead hangs are very important, but again, if you want to learn to do a pull-up, you have to learn how to activate your scapula. You have to learn how to use your back muscles. So that's why we want to make sure that we're doing passive and active dead hangs. Just to summarize our form cues, number 1, hands are going to be shoulder width or slightly wider than shoulder width. Number 2, our thumbs are going to be wrapped under the bar in order to activate our forearms. And number 3 is our leg position. We want to keep our legs together and completely straight. And the biggest mistake to avoid for dead hangs is don't only do passive dead hangs, make sure you're doing active as well. So far we've spoken about upper body movements for both push and pull, and now it's time to get to the lower body. The primary movement for the lower body, and this is a movement that you could do anywhere and it's very easy to scale and load, is the squat. Many people joke about the fact that people that do bodybuilding or people that work out in general never train legs. They always only train their upper body. So make sure that you're not the guy or the girl that has chopstick legs. Not only does training legs give you that aesthetic component, but also it helps with your mobility, your balance, and your overall control for your body. So let's get straight into the form tips for the bodyweight squat. We want to start off with our feet shoulder width or slightly wider than shoulder width. And we want to have our toes pointed straight or slightly pointed out. This will be a function of your hip mobility and whether or not you're able to get into a deep squat with a certain foot position. You can keep any position for your hands that you would like. If you have them clasped in front of your body, that's completely fine. Make sure that your heels are down and you're going to push your butt back as you go down into the squat. Focus on getting as much depth as you can. The focus with any movement that we're doing is full range of motion, so you always want to make sure to try to get that full range of motion. Keep your core tight as you go down. You don't want to have an arch in your back. You would like your back to be flat. That's the goal. Now, if this movement's too hard, there are ways to scale it. One of the best ways to scale it is to either use your couch or a bench or a chair and to just do the eccentric portion of the squat, which is the part where you're just going down. Once you get to the bottom, you're going to sit on the bench or the chair, and then you're going to stand right back up. That little second pause when you sit on the bench or the chair is going to make a big difference, and it's going to help you to work through the strength needed for the full squat. Now, if that's too easy for you and the regular squat is too easy, you can always hold a weight. That could be a kettlebell, a dumbbell. If you're working out at home, you could use textbooks, a backpack. Anything that's additional weight will help you to scale your squat. However, if it is too difficult, you can always try to do the squat while holding onto something. That's just going to help you for balance. Some of the common mistakes for squats are that the heels rise up. If your heels rise up, that will put more pressure on the front of your leg, on your quads. It's not wrong, but it's not the form that we're looking for when doing the basic squat. If you're lacking mobility in your ankles or your hips and you can't do it without going on your toes, try to put something under your heels, and that will help with that mobility because it will shorten the amount of distance that your ankle has to bend. Just to summarize the key points when doing a squat, Number one, we want our feet shoulder width or slightly wider than shoulder width. Number two, we want to keep our toes pointed straight or slightly out. Number three, keep your hands clasped in front of you or behind your head. Number four, keep your core braced. And number five, keep your heels down as you go down into the squat and come back up. The biggest mistakes people make for squats, number one is they round their back. Number two is they don't keep their heels down and they go straight on their toes. Number three is their knees ride in together. We want to avoid that because that's how you can cause injury. And number four is keeping your hands on your knees. You're taking away from the movement by using your arms to push away your legs, and we want to avoid that as well. So for our upper body push, we have push-ups. For our upper body pull, we have the dead hangs, passive and active. And for our lower body, we have squats. So now we want to put all of this together and we want to get some kind of routine going. How many sets, how many reps should you be doing? This is one of the most important things to focus on. If you're just starting out, you want to start off with a lower volume. You don't want to shock your body, you don't want to do too much, you don't want to risk an injury. My recommendation is to try to do these exercises every single day. Do 3 sets of 10 reps of each one. For dead hangs, try to hold it for 10 to 30 seconds. Wherever you are in that range, and do that every single day until you get comfortable with the movements. Once you get comfortable with the movements, you can either increase the number of sets, you can increase the number of reps, or you can move on to a more difficult progression. As far as rest periods are concerned in between sets, you want to focus on taking between 90 seconds and 3 minutes. Depends on how difficult the exercise is for you. If it's way too easy for you and you don't think that you need 90 seconds, I would challenge you to use a more difficult progression because you're probably too strong for the one that you're doing now. Again, focus on doing these every day if you're a beginner. If you're just starting out, the goal is just to get a total volume that is high for the week. You want to focus on doing the simple things over and over again. Don't complicate it, and that's going to help you build the strength in order to move on to more difficult progression. A pro tip is to record your form on all your workouts and the movements that you're doing. Record it for yourself, save it in your Photos app, and as you keep training and are more consistent, you'll be able to look back and see whether or not your form has improved, if you can note the mistakes that you were making before and are correcting them now. And just overall, it's a very, very good way to track your progress. These are the foundational calisthenics movements that every beginner should be doing in order to start off their calisthenics journey. I hope you were able to gain some information from this. If there was something that was a little bit unclear or you would like more clarification with, make sure you include that in the comments below. I respond to every single comment, and stay tuned for more videos ahead.